So James's breakfast is pretty plain this morning. Ginger plus lime juice and some hot chocolate. And I'm having some tea and peanut butter toast. And I'll be talking about these things. And I won't be putting them up because if I do, they'll just blow right over again because it's quite windy this morning. So
I didn't think it was that windy, but we had windier days.
I didn't think so either. But
yeah. Oh, that looks great. And I wish I could eat peanut butter.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Which is not a healthy breakfast, this peanut butter and toast.
It's awesome though.
Yeah, it tastes good. If you like peanut butter.
Love it.
James loves it. He can't have it anymore. Well, nobody can have it.
Yeah, it's got a carcinogen.
Yeah.
Aflatoxins.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's in lots of stuff. If you look, it's in corn and whatever.
Oh, aflatoxins, yeah.
Yeah. So, honestly, I mean, if you think about it, if you're eating something that is going to potentially cause damage to the lining of your stomach or anything like that, right? And then you're eating a carcinogen, whether you're eating them right at the same time or not, then it doesn't make sense. You know you're going to be in trouble if the carcinogen gets into your bloodstream, however it gets in there, right? So anyway, and I've talked about that a lot in the past, and it's obvious to me. Is it obvious to you, James?
No, you don't eat aflatoxins.
That you don't eat carcinogens when you're the lining of your intestine or the stomach or whatever is permeable. If it has some, like say you have some sort of ulceration or something like that, then the carcinogens would then get right into your bloodstream.
Well, and don't eat stuff with cancer.
Yeah. That actually has cancer.
Yep.
Already.
Yep.
So, anyway, but what can you do? This peanut butter was given to me. I'm very thankful for it. This bread was also given to me. I'm thankful for it. And whatever. I'll use the time I have left learning new things and enjoying movies. And singing. And painting pretty pictures. So anyway, I'm talking about the third DVD of this today. I watched that this morning. Perception and action. Most action is unconscious. Other senses determine reaction in form of motion. We see pillow moving towards our eyes and we blink shut. So if somebody throws a pillow at you, you're going to shut your eyes. Or whatever, if somebody if they threw this DVD case at you, you're going to shut your eyes. Anyway, outfielders run in a circular path that matches the shape of the back of the retina, and they wouldn't be conscious of it, but that's how they run if you watch them, he says.
Be semicircular.
Yeah.
But I think he's exaggerating. There's a slight curve. Well, I guess you could say it's a huge part of a big, huge circle. They don't run like this, right? A small circle.
Okay, so then he showed the Ebbinghaus illusion, which was very cool. All of his illusions that he shows are very cool, as far as I can tell. So you can look that up, Ebbinghaus. Sure. Grip aperture, our hand makes the shape, the target, before we pick it up, goes towards it, and it's already shaped like that. I don't even have to look. I bet you it's already like that. Stripe illusion, and wow, did my eyes ever get messed up. But I definitely saw the reverse tilt, and like I had no problem seeing his things today, and then eventually I couldn't look at his illusions because I was feeling so motion sick.
No.
Because it really, I don't know. It's cool, but if you get motion sickness, then it doesn't feel so good afterwards. So we overestimate what we actually perceive. Attention is necessary to perceive things. If nothing moves, the assumption is that nothing has changed. If something is new in the room, it's perceived as moving. Our brain doesn't continue to process the things in the room that it doesn't think are important. So I only noticed the change of his jacket. He changed a whole bunch of different things while he was talking, and he did a great job because it seemed fluid. I didn't catch the breaks, but whenever the camera angle changed, he changed things in the room. It could be like a vase turned into something else and whatever, right? And I only noticed his jacket, which turned from black to white. So that was, surely everybody should notice that one. People often don't notice if a new person is substituted into a conversation with an acquaintance. So they do different tests on people, I guess, and they'll say like they have a moving door, two people moving a big door in between a conversation. Like one, say I'll be asking James. Well, he'd notice if I were a different person all of a sudden. But let's say James didn't know me, and I asked James some directions for how to get to the library where I picked up these wonderful DVDs. And then while we're talking, some people move a great big door in between us, so he can't see me for a minute, and then all of a sudden it's not me he's talking to. He's giving directions. They're interrupting with the door, but they've substituted me for somebody else, and he keeps talking. He doesn't realize I'm a different person. And I guess this is common. People don't notice. Now, they do notice if you change the sex of the person that you're talking to. They notice if...
or at least the way they're dressed, right?
I don't know about that.
They should have done a study on that.
Well, they probably have, James. They don't notice unless it's like... If I all of a sudden became an African American woman, he would notice, apparently, or most people would. If I became a man all of a sudden, he would probably notice. And if I became an old man, he would notice, because apparently you notice age and stuff too. Anyway, but otherwise, nothing. So, and then even when people were asked, did you notice anything weird about that? This is a psychological study, you know, that we've just done on you. Did you notice anything weird about the conversation or whatever? And most people would just say, well, the guys moving the doors were really rude, you know, because they came right in the middle of us. But they don't notice that you've changed, even when you ask them. So even if your eyes are on the road, if your attention is elsewhere, you probably won't notice what's going on the road. So even hands-free cell phones compromise your ability to drive.
Yep.
Without attention, in-depth perception is nearly impossible. Kinesthetic perception, we process without awareness. It's often considered as part of sense of touch, but it's a combination of other senses. So when your arm moves up to press an elevator button, your hips move and your torso moves back. You make compensations for your movement. And we aren't conscious of this kind of movement. But without it, we'd look like primitive robots moving. And 3 semicircular canals in ears filled with fluid causes attached hair cells to bend. Motion of head causes fluid to move, opposite direction of movement of head. Picture a hula hoop filled with a few balls. Well, not filled, like just with a few balls in it. And then, so you hold the hula hoop up and the balls are at the bottom, right? Because they can move all through the hoop. And then when you twist the hoop, the balls, they're at the bottom, but they've moved this way, right? So I think the balls don't move. I think we just perceive them as moving, but they're still at the bottom, right? This is how I see things, is the balls haven't moved at all, but he's saying the balls move in the opposite direction. I don't know that that's true.
Well, movement is relative, right?
That's what I say.
That's this physicists understood this even before Einstein. I don't know where Einstein was that
Cold here.
precipient. He says it's relatively understood.
Oh, it feels kind of cold now. I'm wasting my heat in my teeth.
So in a certain sense, you can say that the sun goes around the Earth. It's just not convenient to describe it that way. It's so much bigger. It's better to use the sun as a point of reference. In the same way that we can say, when we walk, the Earth is moving underneath us and we're just staying still, kind of in our feet. But kind of like those conveyor those things
Yeah.
that people walk on, you just move your feet to stay in balance. And you can say that, but it's just not that convenient. It's better to use the Earth because it's so big as the point of reference.
Yeah.
The Copernican revolution is just didn't really point out the way things were. It just said, okay, we look at things in a different way, and it's going to be more convenient this way. And that's the way it ended up to be, because there are several things that go around the sun. It makes it much more complicated to explain it. You say
Yes.
the sun goes around the Earth.
Yes,
then
because the old models of the solar system were very complicated. And
they
this
had to be
simplified
to
things.
explain,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
They had epicycles, is what they're called.
Yes.
So what he did was just simplify the explanation. So,
And so we tend to think of things like this, like old models of the solar system, as being incorrect.
but they're just not as useful.
Yes.
No. And it'll be the same thing ultimately. Whether or not my view of quantum mechanics gets accepted, it will have to be ultimately. What they've got now is really, 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 really clunky. You can say there's dark matter and there's dark energy and stuff like that, but those are really epicycles. They're just modern day epicycles.
Okay. Cerebellum, base of brain on top of spinal cord. Hindbrain looks like a tiny brain. 10% of brain volume, but contains more neurons than the rest of the brain put together. Motor coordination, balance, and the timing of action seems to be linked to this tiny part of the brain. Proprioception?
What was that?
Yeah, doesn't matter. Accomplished by circuits in this part of the brain. Humans generate action intention in the motor cortex, but all of these signals pass through the cerebellum on the way to spinal cord and beyond. Cerebellum stimulates action before action occurs. Simulates action
Yeah.
before action occurs. I read that wrong. If the action will take longer, a longer simulation time is required, and the action doesn't start until later. We aren't conscious of this. Seeing, remembering, and perception, infants cannot see as well as adults, but they see. People used to believe that they didn't. They aren't able to...
Is that true?
Truly, that's what he says. They aren't able to communicate what they see back to us. Saccadic eye movements and smooth tracking. Eyes tend to jump while scanning, unless there's an object to focus on to smoothly track. So if a doctor puts a pencil in front of your eyes and gets you to watch it. Otherwise, if you watch your eyeballs while you're scanning a room, they jump. Anyway, infants look where the object was, not where it is. There's a lag time. Lag time decreases as infants age. At 2 months, smooth tracking occurs. By end of 3rd month, eye movement seems like adults. Even though gray is the same as relative shade between the black and white stripes, so he showed some examples of how they have been able to study infant perception, like visual perception. So you have a gray circle, and then you have a circle that has black and white stripes. And the black and white stripes, if you put them together into, like you blended the colors together, it would be the same shade of gray as this gray dot. Yet, the infants are always drawn to the black and white stripes. They love stripes. And so they'll look at the stripes. And they'll look there for quite a while before they get bored. And they also love looking at another human face. Newborns are very eager to follow the image of a face. Complexity does make a difference. If the face picture is scrambled so it's no longer a face, they'll still follow the picture, but not for as long. So they're not as interested in that as an actual face, or whatever, a recognizable face. Infants sense and act on their world. Infants in utero hear muffled voices like Charlie Brown adults. Babies are born with sucking reflex. Babies will learn to start a recording of a story by sucking at certain rates. Babies modify behavior to have more control over the world around them. So they want the story, so they'll be sucking at the rate required to start the story. Because they have that reflex anyway, and they change in order to hear the story. Anyway, they also have a preference of sound of mother's voice reading the story, and baby also has a preference for the sound of the story read to them in the womb. Most infants don't like garlic, but if mother eats a lot of garlic while pregnant, infant doesn't make face or turn away from garlic, which is interesting because I'd wondered about that. I'd thought, well, you know, should I even consider being pregnant, considering how much garlic I eat?
I would need it the first
that can't
trimester.
possibly be healthy for a little baby.
The first trimester, anything that's herbal would be dangerous.
Vision is last of senses to develop. Oh, and there was a cool one. It was okay, there's something called pragnans, the desire for simplicity. So he showed a picture that is, all it is like 3 V shapes that if you connected the lines, they'd be a triangle. And in between those are 3 Pac-Mans shapes. And what you perceive is a white triangle, which is in front of these 3 dots, which make up a triangle, and the lines that make up the other triangle. So, and you do that because we prefer seeing 5 parts, perceiving 5 parts, which 1 white triangle, 3 black dots, 1 black line triangle, rather than 6 parts, which are actually there. So yeah, which is interesting. That's everything today that he was telling me I would perceive a certain way, or whatever I was, which I wasn't the other days. That's a Kinetsa display. The central inferred triangle seems to be a brighter shade of white to us also. So there's other things that we... oh, and we also like to perceive 2 aligned objects as 1 single object. So that's like the fact that there's breaks in the line of the V's to make up the triangle. We'd rather see the triangle anyway than to see it as V's. So anyway, that's all I'm going to talk about. Oh, no, I was going to mention we watched
Here, I'll hold it up while you
Rambo.
talk. Are you ready to Rambo?
Yeah, and it was bad. So, but you don't expect it to be good.
It was bad good. You know, I did fall asleep during it.
There was a lot of violence, so much graphic violence.
That's right.
But I guess we're getting used to seeing really graphic violence. But wow, I don't know that I was used to seeing it. Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino.
But one thing I did notice is it's basically, what's the name of that Liam Neeson movie? Is it Taken?
I don't know.
I think so.
What's it about?
The one where his daughter was abducted by... And
he does a good job.
Yeah, that was awesome. So basically this is sort of like that, only daughter doesn't live. I probably
it's
shouldn't
not
have given
really...
it away, but
well, that's early
on.
Early on.
Yeah. So, and you know she's not gonna. So this is a total revenge kind of thing, and
I should have known. You figured it out as soon as they scarred up her face.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're not going to let her live with scars like that.
No.
That would be terrible.
No.
So as soon as that happened, well, she was done.
Yeah.
She was not going to be rescued and survive. So
yeah, it's just, will Rambo wreak his revenge?
Yes.
Big question. I don't know. I slept through the end of it.
Yeah.
But I was watching it. You know, I'm a sucker for these kind of things because, you know, like if someone killed a relative of mine, I'd be...
Yeah.
Unless it came to justice. You know what I'm saying?
But honestly, like, aren't there a billion Latino people in California? Couldn't they find a decent actress to play the mother? I mean, the mother in this was just awful as an actress. Not an actress at all. What I said to James is the producers of the movie or whatever said, look, Sylvester Stallone, we're having to pay you so much. We're going to have to get volunteers or something for the rest of the acting positions.
Who knows what
and he was like, yeah, okay, we'll use my nanny or my cleaning staff or whatever to do that. Honestly, really bad.
It was pretty bad.
And Sylvester Stallone's not a good actor.
Oh, he's awful.
So you get like
He's gotten
him
worse. I don't
in
understand.
a scene alone with this woman, and it's like, God, why even bother watching it?
One of the worst scenes I've ever seen in movies. They were both sucking the energy off of each other. You know,
Yeah,
it's just
terrible.
like totally flat. Can you do a kind of an approximation of the way he talks? Well,
No.
mumbles. It's the way mumbles.
No, like
Yeah.
I was saying to James, they should be able to. They Benjamin buttoned Brad Pitt so he looked younger and younger. So
They
surely,
did, eh?
yes, they did. So surely
Yeah.
they can alter Sylvester Stallone's voice so that he's actually audible to people.
Decipherable.
Yeah.
It's not even audible. It's just this.
Yeah.
Who was it?
I
There
mean,
was some
nobody would know
critic
the
who was talking
difference
about
really,
him
besides the fact that they'd be able to hear him all of
Yeah.
a sudden. Like, don't give him lines.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Just have him miming, you know?
yeah.
Or have him play deaf mute or something like that, doing American Sign Language or whatever, you know?
Sure.
Um,
Whatever. I mean, all he was there for was all the action revenge scenes. He really didn't need any lines.
You're
did he?
right. I mean, yeah.
Just
you know?
work it so that he doesn't have to have
Yeah,
any.
Exactly right. Because you just don't know what guy's saying. So.
Anyway, so I'm going to mention again, watch this movie.
Yeah.
Joker is so worth watching. And honestly, I think that there is a reason why it's set in the 70s. And we didn't mention that yesterday. But do you want to mention what was happening with mentally damaged people in the 70s?
Well, what happened, I think it was around 1970, there was this youthful, and I think someone with sort of aspirations to be nice, dude with a big mustache, I think he had it even then, called Geraldo Rivera. I think it was in New York area. And he went to a place in, I think it was Staten Island, Willow Park. We saw the after effects of Willow Park. Remember that documentary?
Yeah.
It was kind of like a spooky place or something like that. Or was that a movie based there? I can't remember what it was.
I think it was a movie meant to be like a documentary.
Yeah,
but I
something
can't
like
remember
that.
the name
Anyway, I think it's called Willow Park. Willow Park still exists. It's a park there, but I think they had a mental institution there. I think it's Willow Park. And there is a Willow Park in Staten Island. Does that seem like the right sort of thing? Anyway. So Geraldo gets on the TV, and John Lennon catches it. And John Lennon, being a typical yellow, gets all up on the high horse, you know, and Geraldo Rivera is more yellow than maybe anyone else. And, of course, you know, this had already been aired. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I don't think it had been made as a movie, but it existed as a novel, I think, by then. So, you know, Jack Nicholson, he's a big hero. He's been, you know, and he's fighting against Nurse Ratched, and he ends up getting, well, I don't have to do a spoiler alert in this. You know, Jack Nicholson dies. But there's, what do they call him, Chief or something like that, a big native guy in the movie at least, he escapes. And, you know, I have a relative who basically died of schizophrenia. She used her meds. A lot of guys who have schizophrenia don't, but women usually do. And it just made her put on weight. It slows down the metabolism, it looks like. And she used it, I think, almost religiously, and she died of a heart attack when she was a little over 40 or something like that. And maybe 44. So she actually, you know, it wasn't like people were saying, oh, you know, like, you're an awful person, you're crazy, and she ended up being schizophrenic. You know, there was something wrong with her, even from childhood. You know, we weren't saying, you're crazy, you're crazy. But it happened to my brother. I was comparing notes twice. It happened to me. She bites you on the back. She was 4 years younger than me, 6.5 years younger than my brother. And when she's something like, how old would I have been in Regina? Between 5 and 8. And I'd say it would be more like I was 8. Let's say I was 8. Well, she was 4 years younger than me. She's 4 years old, and I couldn't get her off my back. It's amazing. That's why animals, when they're hunting prey, go for the back. You can't do anything about it, right? That's trying to, you don't want to shake her off, you know, because that would hurt even more. And she did that to me twice. She did that to my brother. And there was just something amazing about her. Some sort of, you know, like it's not an evil thing. It's just it would be a physical condition that
Something
had
very different.
mental symptoms.
Well, it might not even be, I mean, we think of things as mental illnesses, But it's just she wasn't maybe as domesticated to live with other people.
It's
Who
hard to say.
knows, right? I mean, you don't know how to look at these things.
Yeah.
But she was obviously very different. And she was, I mean, maybe not a danger to you, but you found it uncomfortable to have her biting your back and not letting go, right?
Yeah. So she heard voices, like, wow, this is before she was diagnosed. She was hearing voices and stuff like that. She was paranoid about a doctor that we know in Africa. Oh, dead. She was paranoid he was still alive. This guy abused children and stuff like that. He was not a very nice guy. I'm not going to mention the name. I don't want anyone, descended from Bozoid descendants coming after me with this suit. But he'd go to an orphanage and he'd check the kids. He'd be there having fun. So, not a nice guy, but this relative of mine, one time at least, was so scared she lost control of her bowel functions. Just proved to, I guess, be herself. It's not as though someone said, you're crazy, and that got her so off. People will say also to people, you're crazy, and it doesn't make them crazy. So, she had problems, and by times she wanted to commit suicide, and by those times she had to be institutionalized, because if someone wants to commit suicide, it's hard to watch over them all the time. So, one schizophrenic guy is diagnosed as schizophrenic. I suspect he was. One of the greatest drummers of all time, maybe the greatest in pop music sort of, and rock music in that genre. Jim Gordon, we'll mention his name. He was hearing voices that his mom was evil or wanted to do him harm, and he ended up killing his mother. Would it have been better for all concerned for him to have been institutionalized?
Okay, but
Damn
the thing
straight,
is
darn straight, his mom might still be alive.
If you want to say, okay, there might be problems with people not getting enough care in mental institutions, but to then release the people from getting any care at all is obviously not going to be as good for everyone.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Yeah. So I don't know what was wrong with the dude that killed John Lennon, but I think he should have been institutionalized if he'd already run across someone's radar. And John Lennon it's not really poetic justice. No one deserves, the penalty for stupidity shouldn't be death. You know what I'm saying? But it's kind of like poetic justice. It's up to by someone that probably should have been institutionalized. So, now, what was in this movie? What was the the Joker. I mean, these guys got problems, and you feel for them, someone once said.
Oh yeah, definitely.
To understand everything is to forgive everything, and that's not true. But it makes you a little more forgiving, I think, and stuff like that. The most important thing with people who want to kill is, or maybe not want to kill, or driven to kill, or whatever.
Can't help it. Whatever.
They should be put away. I mean, it's not good for Jim Gordon that he killed his mom.